All right, I know you're busy. We're going to get you in and out of here. Your thoughts before you went to bed last night had Ishmael Sopsher going to Alabama. Not good for the hometown and the home crowd. How do you feel about it when you wake up?
I mean, that's just my gut feeling, and really, I think this one's going to play out all the way to until he announces, right? I think that LSU, Bama, all the schools really are going to be trying to work him and his family really all the way up until the end. So I could see this going either way, really, and it won't surprise me at all. I just kind of lean towards, for the longest time, I think a lot of people thought Alabama was the team to beat, and you kind of have to wonder what happened down the stretch where LSU could have pulled ahead, and I think there's pressure in state to stay, and good pressure where, hey, look, if you pick LSU, it's a lifetime decision, and I think that's something that's weighed on him and the family's mind a good bit. So I say that, but I never put in a crystal ball pick on Ishmael just because I never knew either way. I may lean one way, like I said last night, but I do think this one could go either way at 1 o'clock.
What about the other? Because look, defensive line is the name that's the goal for today. Like, there's a lot of other nice pieces they could add to this class, but ultimately, in my opinion at least, that's a position group that needs the most help today. What about Byron Young committing at 8 a.m. out of Mississippi?
My guess is that he sticks with Bama. Byron's just been such an honest kid the whole time. I mean, he has said from the start, look, I'm committed to Bama. Even when he took visits, he said, I'm firm. But the one thing he always said was, look, I grew up an LSU fan before I committed to Bama, and that he wanted to wait until February to sign. Didn't sign in December despite being committed to Alabama. He said it was because he wanted to visit LSU, and he did just that. So I think his family had a lot to weigh on. His dad said even to us last night at 24/7 Sports yesterday, he said, look, he's torn. It's his decision, but he's going to, at the end of the day, have to make it. So my guess is that he's probably going to stick with Bama just because that's what he's been all along, right? It was going to take a big push for LSU to flip him just because he was already a part of somebody else's class.
All right, Jay, if I'm reading between the tea leaves and listening to what you're saying, they could go 0 for 2 on the defensive lineman that they have on the board today, and that's a big area of concern, big area of need. What happens if they miss on Ish and if Byron Young sticks with his commitment to Alabama? Anybody that they can go after that?
Well, there's a lot of guys out there that they've offered that they could put back into play. So, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if someone like that happened. Charles Moore is still in play out of Mississippi, who decommitted from Mississippi State, has kind of been down to LSU and Auburn. I mean, he's a guy that, has been really all over the map. It wouldn't shock anyone if he went to LSU. And like I said, it still wouldn't shock me if they land a Byron Young or Sopsher. I just think that it's been sort of an uphill battle facing, a guy who's been committed to Bama, a guy who in Sopsher, who a lot of people think has been leaning to Bama since he's been in high school, despite really – look, what could Ed Orgeron and them have done differently? They sort of did everything, including offering Rodney, his older brother, out of JUCO. So I don't know. I think that we could see, other names pop into play if they have to get past those guys. But that's one of those things where you always kind of have to wait and see what the signing day surprise is. I think right now the focus is all on trying to get, the big three into the boat.
And so outside, and by the big three, is that, Devontae Lee, Ish, and Byron Young?
Oh, well, I guess I'm in on the D-line. So Charles Moore and Sopsher and Young.
Okay, so outside of D-line, where do you think LSU goes today? And I heard that the word on the street is that Ray Parker is probably going to have to go the JUCO route.
Yeah, that's kind of been what people have thought. Now, he's still a verbal commit. So, I wouldn't rule out anything today, especially if they have the numbers. But, you feel good about Maurice Hampton and Sony Fanua, who've been committed and certainly will sign today. Hampton's going to pick between LSU and Auburn, but he'll pick LSU. That'll be huge for the staff. And look, in a meet, at the same time Sopsher's announced and Devontae Lee's announced, and he plans to, in my opinion, pick LSU. I don't see him going elsewhere. And Rodney Sopsher, the older brother of Ishmael, has told me that he wants to make a decision today. His two college offers were LSU and Oregon. So if you're believing that he is making a decision today, and if it's for LSU, that might be telling with Ishmael. But I look at that group. I look at guys like Jay Ward, who've sort of been in play all along and could come back into play here late. Jay Ward was tweeting about LSU last night. So for me, it seems like there's more moving parts than we've seen recently, but it's because they have 6 spots, right? Last year at this time, they didn't have that many spots. I think they only had a few, 3 maybe. So just because they only had 19 signees in December, giving them a lot of wiggle room now, I think it's sort of all come down to waiting that final night out, see who says yes and no, and then kind of reshuffling the board and pressing everybody the next day.
What about Hampton in the MLB? How concerned are they? I mean, the article that I was reading had him ranked as I think 20 something in terms of draftable prospects, 27th out of the top 50 draftable players. How concerned are they might lose him to pro baseball?
Well, it's a concern because he's your top baseball signee. So now remember, he hasn't played his senior year yet, so we're gonna have to see how he does this spring. That'll sort of affect where he goes in June's draft. But I'm honestly leaning towards he's going to go to school. I don't think that he has to jump all over the money right now. If he can wait and play out his career and go pro in baseball or football, he can make more than that than he would make coming out of high school. So my gut is he's going to sign with LSU and then stick with LSU. And for me, it would be by far the best two-sport athlete they've signed since Chad Jones, who is an absolute freak. And I think Hampton sort of fits that same bill, an outfielder and a safety.
Shea, you mentioned Shea Dixon joining us here at 247 Sports. Real busy day for those guys over there here on National Signing Day. A couple more minutes here with Shea. You mentioned that Rodney's going to announce today. No way that he chooses LSU and Ishmael has a chance to choose Alabama, right? I mean, if Ishmael chooses anybody but LSU, Rodney's on a take.
I mean, yeah, that would be the general thought process. So if he is announcing today, that could be a good silver lining for LSU. We'll have to see what happens. So, no, I know that we talk a lot about package deals, but I certainly think they are a package deal in the sense that the teams that offered LSU, Oregon, the teams that offered Rodney were the teams that also wanted to land both of them and give them a chance to play together.
So, Shea, the fact that you're this morning thinking that both Byron Young and Ish maybe not going LSU, and look, that's just like you said, that's very tenuous predictions. Like maybe not the case for sure, but let's kind of assume it is. With how Orgeron, with his comments after the Bama game, directly talking about needing to get better on defensive line, needing to catch up on the defensive line, putting so much effort into getting these guys. Is it going to kind of, do you think it'll maybe discolor to a great degree the overall class just because you lost those very specific battles that you've kind of been hyping up for a while now, and you lost them to the team that you specifically said you had to catch up with at that position group?
Well, I think it's just magnified because we're here at the end, right? I mean, they've already signed 19 guys. You can't discredit the class, which is already top 6 and is going to move up today. So,
well, and I don't mean like professionally, but I mean more in like temperament with the fans. Like, is this what do you think about the reaction?
Right. I mean, I think fans are, we saw it last year with Surtain. Fans are going to be upset if things don't go their way, even more so if they end up playing, for another SEC West team. So, yeah, I think that's always going to happen. Even if you hit on one or two, if you hit on one of them, miss others, people get upset. So I wouldn't look too much into that. I think the bigger thing was they're fortunate at this stage that, they landed Joseph Evans, a two-time, Defensive Player of the Year in his classification. They landed Puaika in December. So they had a couple of guys, took a big D-line class last year. So it's not the end of the world if they don't get these guys. But I don't think that Byron Young or Charles Moore, any of that is really moving the needle more than the perception of Stopford, just because he's been the guy that everybody's talked about for 3 or 4 years now. So I think he's the one that if he went elsewhere, that people would just, be frustrated about.
Christian Williams, last one. We'll get you out of here. What happens with him? He's an 8 a.m. announcement, right?
Yeah, I think he's going to go to Miami, and not for any lack of LSU's fault. He just wants to play boundary corner, and he wants a chance to play right away. And LSU signed really 3 true good cornerbacks in January, and in December, and now they're in a spot where, you're going to get Maurice Hampton today. You're stacked up number 1 corner in the next year for Elias Ricks. You're going to get other guys. So I think he just saw that, hey, look, I don't really want to play safety. If I don't have to, I'd like to try corner. And Miami only has 1 DB committed, and he's not as good as Christian Williams. So I can kind of understand why he would pick Miami, and I think he was pretty honest about what he was thinking all along.
So I've got my account pulled up over at Go247, keeping up with you guys online there. What's the best way to keep up with the coverage all day?
Yeah, just at Go247, check it out, or follow us on Twitter. We'll be sort of on the boards all day. I'll mention another name who, they've been recruiting Jay Ward at DB for a long time, and I think he could come back into play late if the numbers are there. So track it. It's going to be, I think, a fluid day with 6 spots available, and we'll see how things shake out. I think it's going to be an interesting day, to say the least.
Shea, I know it's a busy time for you, man. We appreciate a couple of minutes this morning.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Shady. Holla, man.
Shea Dixon joining us here from Go247. Keep up with everything that's going on here on National Signing Day with him and his group over at Go247. LSU.com. We'll come back. And don't forget, Lieutenant Governor Billy Nungesser coming up 13 minutes from now on Off the Bench.